welcome to another episode of Anti-Agency Podcast, stories of doing business differently. This is my reboot episode, if you will. I've rebranded it a couple times, but I felt compelled to revisit my commitment to podcasting. A lot of that had to do with my recent experience at a event held by Pegasus Ventures, which is a pretty big venture capital. I don't know. They fund, they support startups, and they had a startup conference a couple weeks ago that we sponsored, and I was really taken aback by the amount of interest and activity that we had at our booth and at the show around what I've done and around the agency and the book. It felt like I have more to give. And at this point in my journey, I'm really interested in helping others find their freedom through entrepreneurship. My agency is really run these days by my rock star team, and they don't need me as much anymore. So I'm looking to make good use of my time by helping others navigate entrepreneurship, inspire them to start their own thing and find freedom through running their own business. So I'm coming back to doing this regularly, and I'm excited with some of the topics and folks that I've got lined up. So I hope that those of you that do listen to this find some value in it. But this particular episode, I wanted to focus on what I learned in 2023 as a business owner and a marketer, an entrepreneur. Just kind of a recap of the things that really stood out to me that I learned from, mistakes I may have made that I learned from, or just cool stuff that's in the world right now and how I see that impacting agencies, business owners, entrepreneurs, etc. So this is kind of a smorgasbord episode, if you will. But I promise that you'll find some interesting stuff in here. But normally, I'll have guests. You're not going to listen to me blabbering on and on, just myself. But every once in a while, I like to dip in and provide some insights if and when I feel compelled to do so. And certainly that is the case now. So let's just kind of jump in. I don't have any particular order here, so I'm just going to kind of run through some of these things that I have thoughts around and what I've learned in 2023. So first thing I want to talk about is AI. So everybody's got opinions about AI. I mean, it blew up in 2023. And depending on what industry that you're in or what your profession is, there are varying degrees of impact that this may have had on you, either personally or professionally. In the agency world, there's a variety of different thoughts. Some people are panicking, thinking that their jobs are going to be replaced by the robots, all the way to folks that have gotten really good and creative at actually using AI in a complementary way. And they feel that it's not going to replace real people. It's a tool just like anything else. And that if used wisely, that can only positively impact how agencies deliver what they do. I'm of that mindset. I admittedly only dabbled in AI through the beginning to the mid of the year. I always thought that it was interesting, but ultimately didn't spend a lot of time with it. It wasn't until I got back from that startup conference that I really dug in. Dave, who's on my team, who oversees our sales, really kind of took me through how he trained ChatGPT to kind of mimic his voice and his brand and the steps that he needed to take to kind of get it to that point. That was always kind of like the thing for me is like, oh, this doesn't sound like me, but there really is some things you could do to get it to sound more like you. So I've doubled down on that. I built a custom GPT for my voice, and it's really interesting. I'm still kind of learning how to use it effectively, but it is very compelling. It's crazy how fast it is evolving. I'm getting like Terminator vibes, but again, it's not a replacement for real people. You can't just, no matter how many steps that you take, the output that ChatGPT gives you in terms of content is never going to have that human element to it. So it needs to be used responsibly. In my case, I have it do 75% of the work, but I still got to get in there and massage that content. I got to get in there and update the intro or the conclusion and kind of go in there and give it a little bit more of my voice and make some corrections. So there's still time and effort and expertise that's necessary to use the tool effectively. So I do definitely see it as a huge time saver for me personally and ultimately for our agency, but it still requires effort and expertise. And that's why I don't think it's ever going to replace marketers or agencies, because the fact of the matter is businesses hire agencies because they don't have the time or the desire or the expertise to do any of that stuff. So even if there's a tool that now can do a portion of it, they're still not interested in doing it. They're not, in most cases, experienced on how to use the tool in a way that they can gain efficiencies out of it. So it doesn't change that dynamic of businesses needing somebody to do the work. It's just how the work is done. And I think if agencies are honest about the tools that they use and how they use them, it's not going to change anything. If anything, your output is going to be increased. The quality of what you do is going to be better because now you as a person and your team can spend more time on more creative and strategic things, while tools like AI can help with a lot of the tactical pieces. So it's a very, very interesting piece of technology. And if you haven't really learned about it and how you might be able to leverage it in your personal professional life, I highly recommend that you do take some time to familiarize yourself with it, because it is going to change the world and it's evolving quickly. So definitely check out ChatGPT or similar types of tools. I think you'll be pretty amazed at what they can do for you. A second thing that was really one of the things that I learned over the years is, automation. In addition to AI, automation is really cool. I don't know how many of you are using automation tools, but tools like Zapier, I don't know how they pronounce it, but Zaps. That's one of the more popular, affordable tools. We use it a lot. It's really, for those of you that may not know what a tool like that does, it ultimately takes, it's like think of it like a connective thread between different pieces of technology. So you can automate things that happen. So, if somebody opens a thing or signs up for a thing, then a Zap, when you create it, can connect it to something else. So for example, if somebody buys a digital product from you or a service from you and there's a checkout, and you can have a Zap that tells it when you check out, push that email into your email newsletter on MailChimp or something like that, and then send this thing. So it can automate a lot of things. It does require a little bit of work up front for you to set those things up, but there's a lot of automation that you can do that can save you time, things that you don't have to do, repeatable processes that technology can kind of handle for you. And Zapier has all kinds of different, they connect to just about everything on the web. So there's anything that you can imagine, you can probably do. So that's another one of those tools that I would definitely, if you're a business owner or an aspiring business owner, if you want to get more efficient with what you do, it's an absolutely must have. So I know that I'll be putting some articles out on how to leverage those sorts of things, but there's tons of resources out there that you can leverage to kind of familiarize yourself with how that works and what you can do to leverage those sorts of tools. So definitely get on the automation train. Next, on my bullet point list here, not everyone is cut out to work remotely. We live in a ever-changing work world where more and more businesses are providing remote opportunities, whether it's full-time remote or partially remote. But it's the future, and a lot of businesses are moving to that almost because it's necessary, because a lot of people have an expectation of being able to do that. Obviously, there are certain jobs that you can't do that with. But for those that you can, I think a lot of businesses are getting a lot of pressure, because if they're not offering that, they're losing people to companies that are embracing a remote workplace. That being said, not everybody is cut out for that. Some people can't handle it. It takes a lot of discipline. It takes a lot of self-drive, and some people some people need structure. Some people need that I show up, I work, I punch out and I leave and I'm done with work. Some people have a hard time not having, rails in place for them to stay within certain parameters when they're talking about separating their work or their personal lives. And there's nothing wrong with that. That doesn't mean that that's a weakness. It just means everybody's wired a little bit differently. So that's why it doesn't work for everybody. You've got to really have it. I believe that most people are either inherently wired that way to do it well. That's not to say that you can't learn and evolve and figure out how to navigate that effectively, but some people just aren't wired for that. And we as an agency, we've learned that over the years that some people are better than others at it. And I think ultimately what it comes down to is, you're self-driven. You have high emotional intelligence. It's hard to navigate a culture remotely and to stay connected to people when you're behind a screen all the time. And then discipline, just being able to not get overly distracted or pulled into not working as much or as hard as ultimately how much your company may need you to do, or what is expected of you. So, people, I think you're going to see a rise of classes or training around how to be productive and how to work remotely effectively. I think those are going to be things that companies should really embrace and support having their teams participate in, because it's not as simple as just flipping a switch and doing it for most people. So that's another thing that I've learned over the past year for sure. What's another one here? If you're good at what you do, you'll survive economy downturns. This is a big learning for me, I think, not only this past year, but especially through the pandemic as well. I can't remember what the percentage is, but it's something like 70-80% of startups or new businesses fail. So the odds are stacked against you if you're starting a new business, just mathematically. But the ones that survive are the ones that are good at what they do. If you are good at what you do, or you have a great product or service that people want or need that differentiates, you will survive the downtimes. My agency is a perfect example of that. 2023 was tough. At first I thought, well, what are we doing wrong here? Why aren't we not seeing the growth that I was kind of hoping and projecting for in 2023? And the fact of the matter is sometimes you can't control what happens in the world, with what happens with the economy, or what happens in a particular industry. The agency suffered in 2023. I've been reading on Reddit and just reading through and talking to folks that run agencies, and most of them were impacted in a major way in 2023. But if you're good at what you do, you're going to get through those hard times. And I'm proud to say that our agency is one of those. We've worked through it. It hasn't been easy, and we've had to make some difficult decisions to kind of work through some of those storms. But, I've always said to my team, like, we're going to get through this. We're going to figure this out. We're going to be fine because we're good at what we do. We're passionate about what we do. And the cream always rises to the top. The agencies that are good at what they do fight through those difficult times. The businesses that struggle find a way. And as a business owner, you have to be prepared for hills and valleys. Like, it's not going to be great all of the time. But if you're good at what you do, or if you have amazing products or services, you will survive. And I think I find a lot of strength in that, even at our lowest times, or when I'm paranoid and overly paranoid about whether, I'm going to have enough resources to take care of my team. It's always misplaced, because I always kind of pull myself off the ledge. We're going to be fine. We're good at what we do. We're going to find a way. And it's true if you're good at what you do. So if you're thinking about starting a business, or you're in a business and you're struggling, as long as you are confident that you're good at what you do, you're going to see through it. That I have no doubt. Okay, on that note, the best way to differentiate yourself in today's world is to actually embrace some traditional methods. This is another thing that kind of was an eye-opener to me when we participated in this event a month ago. It's the first event that we kind of exhibited at or sponsored in quite some time. And it was a long time coming. for us, it's just about finding the right place to be, making a good investment in that regard. But it was really refreshing to actually be back out around a lot of other people. And it was a reminder to me of how enjoyable and impactful old school conversations are. We get so comfortable with this remote working environment and having Zoom calls and not having to leave your home office that it can be easy to forget how powerful in-person experiences can be. Just in one day of myself and Dave being at this event, countless connections were made. I think we came away from the event with at least 8 solid leads, qualified leads that we're now nurturing in one day. And that would typically take to drive 8 qualified leads through like Google ads or something digital would take a hell of a lot longer than one day. And just the impact of those in-person experiences were much more impactful than anything that happens behind a screen. Now, don't get me wrong. We live in a remote world and we're going to continue to go down that path. I do think that their technology is going to evolve and it's going to allow us to kind of blend real world and virtual reality, augmented reality. I know Apple's new device coming out. Like there's going to be a lot of things that are going to, blur the lines a bit, but nothing beats old school tactics. Even direct mail is making a comeback. So if you're running a business and you're trying to figure out how to navigate a more competitive world, like think about some old school strategies. Get out to events. Consider a direct mail campaign. Do things that we used to do 20, 30, 40 years ago. You'd be surprised how much those sorts of things will be embraced by those that you're trying to reach. So we're really doubling down on those sorts of things to try to stand out and not get too comfortable behind a monitor all the time, because it does make a difference. The agency game is changing. I've noticed over the past year, especially, there's a lot of consolidation. So if you work in a marketing agency or you own an agency or you're thinking of starting one, there's a lot of consolidation that's happening, a lot of acquisition. I get at least, every month, I at least get 1 or 2 inquiries about, am I interested in selling my agency? There's a lot of interest out there in terms of larger conglomerates that rather than trying to build a specialty from scratch, just buying somebody that does that already, that does it well. Now, whether you consider that a good thing or a bad thing, I could see both sides of it. It really just comes down to look, if you're looking to sell your agency, then it's a great thing. If you're in it for the long haul, I could see that being a good thing too. People showing interest to you or assigning value to you is a good thing. So I don't know that there's necessarily a bad thing to that. It's ultimately, it comes down to my earlier point: be different, be unique, be good at what you do, and you're going to do well regardless of whether you decide to hunker down and continue to do what you're doing for a long time, or if you're trying to position yourself for an acquisition. Either way, you stand to benefit. So how long that'll continue, I'm not sure, but I think you're going to see that as a continuing trend. I think there's going to be a lot of consolidation because everybody thinks that they're a marketer. Everybody wants to start an agency. I mean, just go on Reddit on the entrepreneurship threads and I see a post every day from a young kid saying, I'm going to start my own thing. Well, I'm going to start a social media agency. Is it easy? I mean, there's just a lot of naiveness out there in terms of people that think it's so simple to just jump in and do a thing because they're good at social media personally. And they think somehow that's going to translate for a business. And ultimately you might be able to fool them for a while because most younger generation that grew up with social media can effectively drive likes and engagement, but can you actually navigate that world and drive leads and sales? That's where I think the rubber meets the road and where things get a little trickier. You actually need folks that know how to do those sorts of things. It's a talent. It's not just something that you can show up and do. So a lot of consolidation that's happening. And again, I think that's a good thing. Doubling down on investing time and effort on your personal brand. It's true. Your personal brand follows you and supports you always and forever. A big part of why and how I am where I am right now was an aha moment that I had when Microsoft laid me off back in 2008, 2009, which was jarring because, I was doing really well and it was just a financial decision and they laid off 5,000 people and I had a year to figure out what am I going to do? I mean, I was lucky that the severance package bought me that time, but now I was like, well, now what? I hadn't done anything around my personal brand. I didn't have a website. I wasn't blogging. I wasn't really doing a whole lot with social media. I wrote something about being laid off. It got picked up. I got a ton of activity to my like templatized website that was just out there. And it was just an aha moment. I'm like, oh my God, what am I going to do? I've got 10,000 people on my website and it's horrible. There's nothing there. And I immediately doubled down on getting that right, getting it set up. And I started blogging and talking about who I am and what I do and how I do what I do. I tried to figure out everything I could and learn everything I could about social media and grew a really big Twitter following and just really invested heavily in me, my brand. And that served me well. It got me back to Microsoft, which ultimately I was able to parlay into bigger, more significant roles at other agencies. And then ever since then, for the past 15 years, I've always made sure that my brand is out there and I'm contributing to it, whether I'm writing blog posts, whether I'm posting social media, whether I start a podcast, whether I'm doing video, whatever it is that you do and that you're passionate about, whatever medium that you enjoy the most, put yourself out there, differentiate yourself, because no matter what steps you take along the way in your career, that is always going to benefit you. It's going to set you apart from everybody else. Buy your name URL if you don't have it already, or some variation of it. Put yourself out there. Let the world know who you are, what you do, what makes you special. And then whether you're getting new jobs or whether you're looking to start a business, it's something that you can fall back on no matter what. It's the single most important thing you can do to provide a valuable asset that you're going to be leveraged no matter what you do, whether you work for somebody else or whether you're an entrepreneur, is the single most important thing that you can do that's going to be incredibly valuable to you throughout your career. So make sure that you invest in doing that. Lastly, now look, if you have even thought about starting a business or you feel like you have that entrepreneurial bug in you, and if you're listening to this, you know who you are. It's there. It was always there for me. I knew that that's what I wanted to do, but I was always fearful and scared about that path because I always had responsibilities in my life that felt too heavy to take that kind of risk. And look, most people are in that boat. For me, entrepreneurship came later in life. Everybody's got a different timeline. Everybody's got a different path. But for me, it was later in life. But I had to build a runway to that. I did things and a lot of it was around that personal brand. It's like I was planting seeds and not even knowing it throughout my career, that I was inevitably building towards what it is and what it is that I wanted to do without even knowing it. And that's why I'm doing this. I want other people to find that path. I hope that in what I've done and what I have learned can help others get there more quickly and efficiently and through making less mistakes. But ultimately, now's the best time to ever start a business. The world is digital. You have so many tools, affordable tools and affordable ways to build something for yourself. It is limitless. Even more so than the 6 or 7 years ago that I started. It's massive in terms of what you can do to build something for yourself. And if you are somebody that can't take that leap right away, build a runway for yourself. I talk about this in my book, Anti-Agency. It's one of my favorite chapters in the book. Build a runway for yourself. Build a website, build a brand, put stuff out there. Work on the side for less or for free to build your portfolio. Create momentum for yourself. Create a moving train so that at some point when you are ready to take that leap, and let me tell you something, sometimes that decision will get made for you, as it did for me. The last job I had, I got pushed out, I guess, if you will, but if something happened that was out of my control and I was done. I was so fed up with trying to make traditional 9-to-5 job work for myself that I was done. I'm like, okay, but I already had that train going. For a year, I already had that brand and that business in motion. So I could more comfortably take that leap. Now, it wasn't making enough money right out of the gate, but it was moving and I had momentum. So taking that leap didn't feel as risky. It didn't feel as heavy And that was everything, because it practically eliminated the fear. And the fear is what handcuffed me in previous attempts. The fear is what stopped me from actually figuring things out enough to make that work full time. And when I was able to do that, it took off. And trust me when I say, if I can do it, anybody can do it. That's the reason for my book. That's the reason for this podcast. And it's the reason for a lot of what I'm doing today, and probably for the last leg of my career, is in inspiring and motivating, helping others to find that for themselves. So that's my story, and I'm sticking to it. So if you've listened this far, then I could not be more thankful for you listening to just me for 25 minutes. I hope you heard something that was useful, and I really look forward to a lot of the guests that we're going to have, some really cool people doing some cool things. So thank you for listening. Stick in there. If you haven't read my book, Anti-Agency, please check that out at antiagencybook.com. You can find me at jasonyormark.com. Like, share, subscribe, all that good stuff. Thank you for listening. We'll catch you on the next episode of Anti-Agency Stories of Doing Business Differently. See you next time.